The land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we as beneficiaries of the treaty must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, we do not have a supplementary agenda this evening. Rules for the council chambers. The municipality of Chatham-Kent supports open meetings that welcome debate of public policy issues in an atmosphere of inclusiveness, integrity, civility, fairness, and respect for differing points of view. Anyone conducting themselves in a way that disturbs, disrupts, or impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting, interrupts or makes derogatory statements or hate speech, defamatory comments about councillors, staff, speakers, or fellow members of the public may result in removal from the premises. We ask that you do not approach council members if they are seated in their council seat around the council horseshoe. The use of posters, signage, and literature is also prohibited. Mr. Mayor, we do have one conflict of interest this evening. Councillor Wright on item 16E, the RFP award for recycling collection at the Chatham-Kent Municipal Facilities. Councillor Wright has not logged into the call virtually yet. And I will pass it over to Councillor Carmen McGregor for our artist feature.
Thank you, and through the chair, and welcome, Gavin. Thanks for joining us tonight. Gavin Warren is a newly appointed principal clarinetist of the Etobicoke Philharmonic, when I read it, I said it quite fine, orchestra. He has a bachelor's degree in performance from the University of Toronto, where he studied with professional clarinetist Peter Stoll. One of Gavin's main goals over the past year was to make classical music more accessible to the people of Chatham-Kent, particularly those in the municipality of Wellisburg. He has set about accomplishing this task by staging a local recital series and offering music instruction in one-on-one or group settings. Though a relative newcomer, Gavin is thrilled to be a part of our growing music community in the area. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, now we'll move on to the recognition of, oh, sorry, you're going to play. Sorry.
Gavin, we're absolutely thrilled to have you call Chatham-Kent home, and thrilled to have you come out here, and we appreciate once a month, we appreciate artists, both visual and performing, here in our council chambers to celebrate the amazing people we have across our community from a cultural perspective. So thank you for performing for us tonight.
Okay, next is the recognition of the Chatham Crush U13B hockey team for winning the Ontario Women's Hockey Association Provincial Championships.
So they beat teams from all over, and this is the first time ever they've won. So we're here to celebrate that. And Derek, better known as Dip, right? Okay, I'm not gonna ask why. But we got certificates for the whole team. We'd love to get a picture of the certificates. But is any few words you want to say? I'm limiting you to 20 minutes, all right?
Just want to say thank you to the girls and their parents. It was a great season. Everybody was unbelievable all year. The girls worked hard from September all the way through. It was just great to see them achieve the goal for the season. And thank you for having us. This is great that you're recognizing these girls on the incredible achievement. So thank you.
Mayor, they can't hear on TV without the microphone.
Okay. Yes, so there we go. You can hear us on TV now. So you can't read our lips on TV? Anyway, we're just going to hand these out so everybody has them. And maybe you call them up just real quick and we'll celebrate each player.
McKenna DeMayer. Emerson Deneuer. Hannah Heinhaus. Casey Holmes. Casey Horak. Lily Jack. Kate Kanotic. Lane Mason. Briley Ovika. Brooklyn Pierce. Aslan Sony. She's not here. Jill Tope. And then Kendall Dietrich, Bailey Williams, and Kayana Sony.
Awesome. Congratulations, girls. Fantastic accomplishment. We're so proud of you here in Chatham-Kent.
Just to let everybody in the room know that Councillor Wright has joined us online, and we'll move to the deputations. Yeah, had him. So the first deputation we received was an email only. It was with regards to item 21D, motion of Councillor Bondi regarding proposed removal of trees from Erio and Victoria Ave. It was from Sharon Paff, who was representing Erie Community Association on behalf of them as their vice chair. So that was emailed to council, and she's not present this evening. The remaining deputations are here, and they are on item 18A, the procedure to fill vacancy on council. We'll start with Bill Parks, and on deck is the Kent Federation of Agriculture. I will remind all speakers here this evening that there is a maximum of 5 minutes. The timer will be on the screen for your convenience. Thank you.
I'm hot. Mayor Caniff and Council, I wish to speak to the appointment of Marina McDonald. I have nothing against Marina. I have a lot against appointment. All members of Chatham-Kent Municipal Council must be elected by the people, not appointed by the council. The election of Chatham-Kent Council that happened in 2022 was for our mayor and 17 other councillors. All of our 2022 councillors were elected. No one was appointed. A departing councillor, Steve Pinsonneau, our new MPP, was elected in a by-election by the people of Lambton, Kent, Middlesex riding. Mr. Pinsonneau had to campaign and seek election by the people in a public vote. Mr. Pinsonneau had to face 7 other candidates. He was not appointed. In our last municipal election, all councillors were required to campaign to be voted into council. In Ward 3 of Chatham-Kent, 79% did not vote for Marina McDonald. Therefore, she did not become a Chatham-Kent councillor. To become a councillor representing Ward 3, Marina McDonald must face the electorate of Ward 3 of Chatham-Kent in a by-election against other hopeful candidates. If Marina McDonald is the winner of the by-election, then she deserves her place on Chatham-Kent Council. If Marina McDonald is appointed, she has not earned the right to be a Chatham-Kent councillor. Councillors, I urge you to turn down this appointment. Yours truly, a citizen of Ward 3 of Chatham-Kent, Bill Parks from Longwoods Road. Thank you for listening.
Next speaker is on behalf of the Kent Federation of Agriculture. On deck is Ron Verhale.
Thank you very much. My name's Jim Brockett. I'm the Vice President of the Kent Federation. I'm filling in for Brad Snoblin, our President. Mayor Kenneth and members of the Chatham-Kent Council. We as the Kent Federation would like to weigh in on the 13th tonight, the 18A procedure to fill the Ward 3 vacancy on the council. 2 choices are available to you, made available by the Provincial Municipal Act. 1 to appoint, and the 2nd to hold a by-election. The recommendation to council from staff and the clerk is to see the candidate who placed 3rd in the 2022 election, Marina McDonald, to stand, and only if she declines, then hold a by-election. It is stated in 18A that time is of the essence in filling this vacancy. Yet, Ward 1 had a vacancy for close to a year, and that didn't seem to be of any problem with 1 less vote. The cost of a by-election is estimated to be, in 18A, to be approximately $75,000. This is what it was in a much larger center near Toronto. It is very possible that the rural Ward 3 could easily be as much as half that amount. The Kent Federation of Agriculture recommends and supports a by-election in Ward 3 for the following ethical reasons. Transparency. By-elections are generally considered more transparent because they allow the voters to choose their representative. Appointments, on the other hand, may lack transparency. Representation. By-elections ensure that citizens have a say in selecting their representatives. Appointments, while efficient, may not fully represent the people's will. Accountability. Elected officials are accountable to voters. Appointed individuals may not face the same level of accountability. Fairness. By-election treats all potential candidates equally, whereas appointments involve subjective judgment. Once again, the Kent Federation of Agriculture, representing over 1,800 farmers and landowners across Chatham-Kent. The majority of our members live and work in rural Chatham-Kent and take a very active interest in the local governance of our municipality. The consensus is clear that our membership and many other residents of Ward 3, I've been on the phone all weekend since Thursday morning, that our membership wants to see a by-election for the vacant seat in Ward 3, since this is one of the first times, not the only, but one of the first times this situation has occurred in Chatham-Kent. Whatever action takes place may be precedent-setting if someone else loses their seat for whatever reason, whether it be health, personal, whatever it may be. Kent Federation of Agriculture and Ward 3 citizens, please ask the council to support a by-election for the vacant Ward 3 seat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ron Verheil. On deck is Dirk Meerseman.
I don't see Ron.
Okay, Dirk, are you here? Please come forward. And on deck is John Serapnikas. You'd think I'd get that right after how many times I have to say it. Thank you.
It's actually Mearsman. Wow. Never thought I'd be up here actually talking about this, guys, but I believe there should be an election for the vacancy. An appointment by the members of council is very undemocratic and runs against the spirit of the election system. And I also think that the people have the right to say who is going to be on that council, not our mayor, not you people here. The amount of an election is roughly, like one person had just said, around $75,000. An election at that cost to me is the right thing to do. It's the democratic thing to do. It's money well spent. And that candidate that you're all trying to put in came in third, not second, and a distant third at that, which is totally wrong. Like the other gentleman said, this is a precedence that you could set, which means things could happen later on in the future where a council member strays off its path and the rest of you don't agree and you oust them out, then you appoint who you want, which is totally wrong. This is a democratic society, at least I think it is. We're not in Russia here. The people should be able to vote on this, and that's my say.
Thank you. And the last speaker is John Serenepkis. Is he here? Okay. Council, you were forwarded both Ron and John's deputation, so you do have that there to read. We will now move on to the consent agenda. This evening, the following reports have been pulled from the agenda to be voted on separately. Item 16E, the RFP R24-177 award, the recycling collection of Chatham-Kent municipal facilities. Councillor Wright has declared a conflict. Item 17A, the Chatham-Kent Police Services CCTV project, Bird's Eye View, has been pulled by Councillor Crew, Councillor McGrail, Councillor Jubinville, Councillor Doyle, and Councillor Allen. Item 18A, the procedure to fill vacancy on council, has been pulled by Councillor Doyle, Councillor Story, Councillor Wright, Councillor Jubinville, and Councillor Allen. Item 20A, the Chatham-Kent Agricultural Advisory Committee, has been pulled by Councillor Jubinville. Item 21B, dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation 2023 and 2024, pulled by Councillor Sakachi. Item 21D, motion of Councillor Bondi regarding proposed removal of trees from Erio and Victoria Ave, pulled by Councillor Bondi and Councillor Sakachi. Therefore, the remaining items are on the consent agenda to be approved in one motion. They are items 15A, B, C, 16A, B, C, D, item 18B, 19A, 20B, C, 21A, C, E, and 22A.
Councillor McGrail and Councillor Thompson, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
Yes, I will move.
Absolutely, will second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Wright?
Yes.
Councillor Hall?
Yes.
And Councillor Doyle?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0. Moving on to tender award 16E, RFP R24-177 award, recycling collection at Chatham-Kent Municipal Facilities. We have a conflict by Councillor Wright.
Councillor Allen and Councillor Duvenville, can I get you to move this, please?
Happy to move it.
I so second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Hall
Yes.
and Councillor Doyle.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 14-0.
Item 17, police services.
17A, Chatham-Kent Police Services CCTV project, Bird's Eye View. We have a presentation by Chief Khan.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment and publicly thank those who were instrumental in preparing, conducting the research, and assembling the final report to council that you have in front of you this evening surrounding this initiative. Our project manager, Sarah Vandebrand, who's right over there, seated to my right. Inspectors Mike Dominy, Jason Chakowski, IT Coordinator Quentin Sprick, Crime Analyst Daniel Lunn, Mr. Richard Drulard from Security and Risk, Ms. Jennifer Sherrill from Purchasing and Accounts Payable, Mr. Jonathan Sinopoli from Legal, and last but certainly not least, our CFO, Mr. Gord Quinton. Fortunately, he's not here this evening, but much appreciated. Thank you all. This following presentation will give an update on the current pilot project we initiated back on Monday, July 3rd of last year, but also the future of CCTV for all Chatham-Kent, benefiting all of our citizens and businesses. As you may recall, when I initially presented this business case to council back in September of 2020, I proposed for phase one a pilot project with cameras for downtown Chatham proper, with the potential for expansion of this initiative to Wallaceburg. Having said that, I hope this evening you will find our recommendations contained within the report to council that we initially proposed exceeds your expectations. Let me just go to the next slide here. So initially when we started this project, we applied for the Ontario CCTV grant, and we were successful securing $102,243 over the last couple of years to support this initiative. It was introduced as a proactive crime prevention project dedicated to deterring and reducing crime here in the municipality of Chatham-Kent while aiding in the identification of witnesses, or criminals, I should say. We currently have in place an existing 4-camera pilot that is passive in nature. The cameras were placed at primary locations in the downtown core of Chatham, where it was determined the most benefit would be realized. CCTVs have assisted us immensely in what I like to refer to as the 3 I's, as you can see in the slide depicted up above. And they are identification of suspects, identification of witnesses, and finally, in providing instrumental evidence for court purposes. But it also enhances both public and officer safety. The current system has helped us to identify a suspect in a bank robbery at the TD on the corner of 3rd and King. In addition, arresting and charging a male and female party, 2 separate incidents, for mischief to the cenotaph. Also arresting and charging 6 youths involved in a very unfortunate swarming incident in Tecumseh Park. And those charges ranged from assault causing bodily harm to aggravated assault for those youths. It also resolved a few weapons calls, a knife-wielding suspect, shooting, and a suspicious person with a firearm. And in regards to the shooting, unfortunately, I can't provide details on that one because it's still before the courts. In all these cases, it provided supporting evidence and validating witness statements, as well as identifying a suspect in an arson incident, and assisting us in determining who was at fault in a rather serious motor vehicle collision. Finally, it helped us locate a high-risk missing person, which I referred to in your report to council. These are just a few actual examples where CCTVs have been invaluable for us and our community. All that being said, CCTVs have moved on significantly since the inception of this pilot, just over the past 10 months. The existing solution is passive in nature and accessed after the incident. It is a manual process to investigate static footage to source information relevant to an incident. During assessment of the pilot, we identified new technologies that offer more functionality and much better value for our dollar. AI, artificial intelligence software, brings capabilities like we have never seen before. Instead of finding the incident manually, the system gives us extensive smart options to proactively alert to situations as they arise, real time. We can add information to help us find missing persons or stolen vehicles instantly, instead of manually searching through hours of footage. We can instruct the system to notify us of events as they happen, giving us the ability to respond to situations quicker than ever before. The camera system can be used proactively to search for identifiers such as clothing, vehicle markings, and etc. We just punch it into the search engine. It does not comparatively search any of our databases, so our records management system, for specific individuals or vehicles, ensuring that we comply with privacy legislation. CKPS has reviewed regulations concerning privacy and what our citizens and businesses should reasonably expect of this service. Anyone within the CKPS that uses the system for the purpose of crime prevention or investigation must complete mandatory training, adopt best practices, review our policies and procedures in regards to these devices, and the system is always audited for its usage. This new technology conforms to all required privacy and recording regulations, is extensively encrypted, and uses government-level cloud services for the most secure storage options possible. We actually use Amazon Government Web Services, which is a cloud storage, as opposed to the old antiquated oh, what are they called? Yes, yes, thank you. This cloud storage also provides us with unlimited volume and unlimited storage. We want to ensure that this service is an asset to Chatham-Kent as a municipality and gives our citizens an added layer and an increased feeling of safety. We have and will continue to deliver a service that is considerate of all aspects of the Information Privacy Commission, IPC standards, as well as MFIPA legislation and privacy guidelines. To date, and since our inception of CCTVs in Chatham proper, which was just July of last year, so over the last 10 months now, we have received no formal complaints or FOI requests surrounding these devices. And in my opinion, that is indicative of the fact that the majority of our citizens accept these devices. That being said, any future FOI requests will be handled appropriately in accordance with guidelines and regulations. This slide depicts exactly what our signs look like and the information contained within those signs. Signs have and will be posted at every camera location complying to public recording notification regulations. If you go to our website at www.ckpolice.ca, under FAQs, it outlines how to file an FOI request with our service. So, where are our current CCTV cameras located? Let's see. Well, current CCTVs are located at King Street and 3rd, 3rd Street in Wellington, King Street and 5th, and finally at the Cenotaph. Now, just recently, about 2 weeks ago, we installed 2 additional cameras at with our new supplier, not our current supplier. And those 2 new cameras, the one camera is located right at the corner of King and 4th, and the final one is located at the corner of Wellington and Queen Street. So, the current passive system, which we have, has recognized benefits for the service. However, it is limited in its abilities to zoom in on license plates or matters of interest. The new solution can zoom up to 150 feet for bullet and quad lens, and up to 600 feet for a PTZ lens designed to monitor vast areas or large crowd events. Cameras could be deployed primarily in the downtown core areas across all 5 towns as proposed in the RTC. Cameras all have built-in AI capabilities and range from a bullet-style observation camera to a quad lens with 4 built-in cameras or an ALPR-enabled bullet cameras. And ALPR stands for Automated License Plate Readers. And finally, a 360-degree PTZ model. So, we are proposing that a total of 35 fixed CCTV cameras would be deployed across the region with 3 special event ad hoc cameras for major incidents or public special events, and more cameras can be added across the municipality as required. The system is scalable rapidly with the potential to add new sites within hours of receiving this new equipment. As we are adopting cell technology, there is no requirement for consideration of fixed fiber, reducing substantially the potential delays and costs associated with traditional connectivity requirements. So, I appreciate there's a lot on that particular slide. And I'll go through it. A crime analysis for each core area was conducted to identify the best possible and most strategic locations to implement the technology. The incidents noted on the crime maps include, but are not limited to, stolen and motor vehicle collisions, thefts, suspicious persons, assaults, break and enter, drug-related offenses, and missing persons. And you can see that in the bottom left-hand corner depicted in that legend right there. Also included in that slide is where we would like to implement or place the new cameras for Chatham proper. For Wallaceburg, we are recommending 8 cameras as depicted in the slide, and we can add more cameras at any given time, and really our only limitation is budget. In Ridgetown, we are recommending 4 cameras. I would add that over time, where we see the need to increase coverage, a business case will be developed and we will seek approval to expand the solution to meet the needs of any given particular community. In Blenheim, we are recommending 4 cameras. Cameras can be deployed to best suit the analytics in each area with options for ALPR-enabled bullet hardware that is best used for traffic issues, quad lens that are typically installed at major intersections, and continuous recording cameras, all, as I indicated before, with AI, artificial intelligence software. Finally, for Tilbury, we are recommending 5 cameras. But we will have ad hoc cameras at our disposal that can be installed instantly should we have the need to monitor a serious crime event or for added security at community special events. As part of the research in obtaining best solution and best value, one of the deciding factors to deploy this proposed technology was obviously the financial considerations attached to it. Passive cameras that we currently have with fixed fiber connectivity have proven expensive to install and maintain, while the actual deliverables have their limitations. This chart outlines not only the significant cost savings by adopting this new CCTV platform of approximately, as you can see there, approximately $883,000, but also the value for our money when this is reviewed on a location-by-location basis. When you consider the ability to respond quicker, potentially deter criminals who know they are being recorded, and give our citizens and businesses a new level of safety, the costs pale in comparison to the benefits. As a result, and in my humble opinion, this RTC should be accepted and approved by council. This concludes my presentation, and at this time I will certainly, myself and Sarah, will certainly field any questions or concerns you may have.
So, Councillor Crew and Councillor McGrail, can I get you put on the floor, please?
I'll move all 3 of the recommendations, and I may have an amendment.
Okay.
And I will second.
Okay, Councillor Crew, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Sarah. Excellent program. Okay, I'm not. So these cameras aren't hardwired in?
No.
How does that? Are they battery operated? That just came to my mind. I'm thinking, well, how?
Yeah, they're wireless, but they do have battery backups.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
It's through cell technology.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Oh, can you go to the mic, please? The people at home can't hear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Carew, thank you for the question. The CCTV cameras, as the Chief has indicated, use cell technology, so they don't require hard fibre connectivity, but they are placed on public light poles, and they have a very simple adapter which taps into the light pole to get a power source.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the timeline, Chief, to install these 35 cameras, is this going to be staggered? Is it, let's just...
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, if this is approved, we've already confirmed with our supplier that everything is in stock, and we can go immediately.
Good. Okay, so this is an excellent tool, and I look at it as something proactive. Everyone that is in the downtown cores and areas know that they're being videotaped, videoed. And they have these cameras are not aimed where anyone has the expectation of privacy, correct? So
I'm
it's
sorry.
not aiming in somebody's windows or anything like that. It's all on the street.
Yeah, that is correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor, only public spaces, and they have screens to ensure that. Another governing device or mechanism that we have is that we conduct spot audits as well to ensure compliance.
Thank you. Can you tell me and tell council the cost savings that we can expect to see? Maybe the savings, let's just call it the savings from officers not having to do a full investigation. They know that they have this video of an incident. Can you explain the type of savings that we can see?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's actually hard to quantify, Councillor, at this time in the early phases of this pilot project. What I can tell you is that it is an invaluable tool to assist our effectiveness and potentially reduce the amount of time required to solve crimes. It expedites the process or our investigative process in some of these cases in providing us the reasonable grounds to lay an arrest and, or I should say, effect an arrest and lay appropriate charges.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. You mentioned that you have some ad hoc cameras.
Yes, that is correct. 3.
3? Okay. Now, I noticed in the list, there's 5 communities, and we talked about this, but we didn't see Dresden, Wheatley, Thamesville. Those are pretty significant communities in Chatham-Kent that deserve the same protection and feeling of safety and public safety that these cameras give. Do you have an amendment that we could see some flexibility with where these cameras go and that they include these 3 communities?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Reminds me of an old adage, Amat Victoria Curam, which loosely translates from Latin that victory loves preparation. And yes, Councillor, consideration has been given to other key areas across Chatham-Kent. Let me just see here if I've got it on my next slide. We can add more locations as obviously finances permit. We are proposing for Dresden, as you can see depicted in the slide above, 2 quad cameras and 4 bullet cameras at key locations based on crime analytics and calls for service.
Okay. Did you have Dresden, Wheatley, or?
Yep.
Okay.
I also have.
We might as well just keep going. Wheatley and Thamesville.
Certainly. Dresden, Thamesville, depicted above. Now, thankfully, Thamesville has very little crime stats. However, it is a significant thoroughfare for traffic to, obviously, the Highway 401 and has key information when trying to track vehicle activity. Obviously, other locations that can provide critical data can be added with ease to this system. And as a result of that, if I go to the next slide, Wheatley is proposed as, our proposal is that we install 1 quad and 2 bullets, but it should be noted we can increase CCT coverage, as I would suggest that the, as you can see depicted in the slide, that the calls for service in Wheatley warrant a need for additional cameras. But this is something that I would need to discuss, obviously, with my crime analyst and senior staff to ensure we place any additional cameras at the most strategic locations.
Okay, so I don't know if this is you or Sarah. To add, if So you got 35 cameras, so if we said, you can use some of that, take those 35 cameras, include these 3 communities. Is there some flexibility to spread them out, change the layout that you have? And to include those 3 communities, if we added an amendment to include those 3 communities, and you do the analysis as to where they go. Obviously, somebody's going to lose one here or there, but then we can include these other communities that should have the same protection.
Yeah, same level of service, absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have, and this slide depicts the financial implications to include those 3 other communities, Dresden, Thamesville, and Wheatley. And as you can see, the costs noted here are, just take through here. The costs depicted in the slide include one-time capital. That includes the hardware, software, installation, connectivity, first-year support, and ongoing annual costs for the connectivity, data packages, and software licensing. To increase coverage to accommodate Dresden, Thamesville, and Wheatley, the budget would increase as detailed in the slide depicted above.
Okay, and I don't know if I missed it in here, but where are we funding this from?
The recommendation is that the funding for this initiative come from a strategic reserve.
Okay. Okay. So, Judy, to change the recommendations to include this layout, would that change the recommendations that we've moved?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there are 3 recommendations on the report that don't include those 3 communities. So, Chief, can you help us to understand if there's numbers to be changed, or is it easier just to put the 4th recommendation for the 3 additional communities at a certain price?
Yeah, actually, Madam Clerk, I have the recommendations right up here,
Oh, well,
the
there we go.
amended recommendations. So the amended recommendations would read as follow. Council approve recommendations to expand the closed-circuit television system project's bird's eye view to deploy additional cameras at core locations in downtown Chatham, Wallaceburg, Blenheim, Ridgetown, Tilbury, Dresden, Wheatley, and Thamesville at a cost of $989,315. And now that does include HST. Capital costs of $346,493 be funded from the strategic reserve. And then the 3rd recommendation is in regards to the operating costs of $108,884 to be funded from the strategic reserve for 2024, and ongoing operating budget impacts will be addressed as part of the 2025 annual budget update, including possible offsetting grant opportunities. As I indicated earlier in my presentation, we have been successful over the last couple of years in receiving provincial grant funding surrounding CCTVs of approximately $103,000, and I'm going to remain optimistic that that will continue.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilor McGrail, are you okay with the amendment?
Yeah, I just have one question.
Okay, now the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not done.
Oh, sorry,
I have one
Councilor
more
Crew.
question.
Go ahead.
So this is coming from strategic reserves. Who can tell me what will that leave in our strategic reserve?
I would defer that to, yes, Steve.
I can get that, or through you, Mr. Mayor, I can get that for you. It'll just take me a couple minutes.
All right, thank you. Okay, that's all.
Councilor McGrail, followed by Councilor Juvenville.
Sure, thank you, through you, Mayor Caniff. So my one question is, as I read this, is that the number 1 recommendation will be funded through that strategic reserve too, right?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, I'm okay with the amendment. Thank you.
Councilor Juvenville, followed by Councilor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief Khan. I just have a few questions, so I'll just ask them and then maybe you could answer them. Question, why was this not included in the recent budget that you presented to us? And with that being said, could we not postpone this until you come and ask us again in the next budget deliberations? Is that an option?
There's three questions there through you, Mr. Mayor. Let me try to answer your first question, which was why it was not
Yes.
presented
Correct.
in my original budget. The reason it wasn't presented in my original budget, it was still a pilot project. And at that time, when I originally presented it, I did say that I was going to come back with further requests with the possibility of the expansion of this into phase 2. There's actually a phase 3 to this, which I will touch on later, which again expands it even further into other places such as Mitchell's Bay, Erio, and Shrewsbury. Time is always of the essence, Councillor. I think I've been able to confirm the fact that these assets are invaluable, not only from a policing perspective, but for overall safety of our community and our citizens. So that's why I'm here present today. Also, new technology has just arisen. We didn't have this technology just as early as 10 months ago. Thanks to Sarah and the entire team, but certainly Sarah in conducting the research to find another supplier, another vendor. And thankfully, we were successful in finding one with a significant cost reduction. As I indicated in the original proposal, there was a cost savings of almost $900,000 in comparison to the static, antiquated system that we currently have right now. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yes. Next question. So where is this directive coming from? Is this an initiative of the CKPS, or is this a provincial initiative, or where is that coming from?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would best depict it as a collaborative initiative at a municipal, police, and provincial level. Why I include provincial is because they're providing grant funding for this. Right from the initial proposal of this, it has always been a municipal and police initiative. But I would definitely add the province to it as well.
So the grant money, is it reflected in what your ask?
Yes, for the last 2 years anyway. As I indicated, we've received $103,000, which we have put towards this project.
Okay.
And any future, and just to elaborate on that a little bit more, if we are successful, obviously we will continue to submit for that grant funding. And if we are successful with that grant funding, any funding received, we will put towards this project.
Okay, thank you. So we've all heard about the talk about smart cities and 15-minute cities, and I have a lot of constituents that are concerned about this being the onset. So how do I calm the concerns of those who feel that this is the beginning of the surveillance required in smart cities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I touched on that, Councillor, in my initial presentation, that there are a lot of checks and balances in place to assure that we are in compliance with the IPC, MFIPA, but also internal checks and balances, self-audits. Only authorized personnel who have done the extensive training in regards to these devices will have accessibility to them.
Okay, thank you. I realize now that we've changed it, we've added some cities, but have there been studies done in, for example, Blenheim, Ridgetown? I mean, do we know that this cost is needed in these cities, in these other cities, other than where you've had in Chatham proper? Do we really need them, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as again depicted in my slides and in your report to council, we did a crime analyst report. Our crime analyst did do a robust analysis in respect to all of these places. And as the map depicts in each one of these hamlets, you can see that there's significant criminal activity in regards to thefts, break-and-enters, assaults, mischiefs, certainly in the downtown core areas where our businesses and where the vast majority of people gravitate towards, right? So yes, and if we are going to provide one service, I've always proposed that we have to ensure that the level of service that we provide is equally dispersed throughout our entire municipality.
Okay. Instead of putting all of these costs into the CCTV, have we explored more community policing, like boots on the ground, injecting foot patrol versus this, more of a proactive measure instead of a reactive measure? Because I see this as more reactive, whereas injecting our officers is more proactive, perhaps?
With the old static system, you would be correct. It was very reactive. But with artificial intelligence and alert systems, where we can set up parameters for times if there's movement in particular business areas or if there are large crowd events or whatever, no. Those alerts will go out instantly to our ECOs and via our mobile data terminals to our officers, which will get us rolling to those particular hotspots that much sooner. So the onset of new technology has really converted this from a proactive, or I should say from a reactive, to a proactive device.
Okay, thank you. I have two more quick questions. With the AI involved, is there biometrics or facial recognition involved in this?
Yes, there is. We don't really say facial recognition. The term that we're using right now is, yes, exactly. Thank you, Sarah. It's more facial likeness.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I just want to clarify, I think I know the answer, but are they actively being monitored, or will they be actively monitored or recorded and then viewed if needed? How is that?
That's an excellent question, Councillor, through you, Mr. Mayor. They will be intermittently monitored. Obviously, if we have a serious criminal or serious crime, we can go back to it as an investigative tool. But as I indicated with the AI technology, we're hoping that we're going to be able to utilize these in a more proactive modality.
Okay, thank you. I am a strong advocate, obviously, of upholding the law and fighting against crime. I'm just struggling with the cost. It's a lot of money, so I'm going to still listen to other questions and whatnot. But thank you for bringing it to council.
Councillor Doyle, followed by Councillor Allen.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor. So I guess my issue with this one, so I agree with Chatham and Wellsburg. When I was campaigning, like I know my wife was talking to me about Blenheim and specifically, and like how that was one of the nicest communities in Chatham-Kent. I've been in Blenheim quite a bit. I personally don't think it's needed in Blenheim, Ridgetown, Tilbury, Dresden, Wheatley, or Thamesville. And that's just going to continuously add to our costs and bring our taxes up higher. I guess this to me reminds me of one of my other jobs is an insurance broker, and we had one of the big companies out there have like a drive system in your car and say you plug this in your car, you get 10% discount off the start, you get up to a 25% discount, and we will never decrease your premium if you're a bad driver. And we're only going to use it for, I think it was like 3 things. And then I said, I don't know if that's going to be true long run. I didn't believe it. I figured they'd start digging people for being bad drivers. And we're about 6-7 years into this thing, and they use it now. It's an app on your phone. They use it for a lot more than just those 3 things. And now, if you're a bad driver, they ding you up to 25%. This was all stuff that the company said to us in our office. We will never do this. We will never do this. We will never do this. So to me, when in the report it already says it's got AI capabilities and we're going to improve it as it goes on, this almost seems like a big brother to me. And in communities that I don't think we need it in, like Blenheim, Ridgetown, Tilbury, Dresden, Wheatley, and Thamesville, it's overstepping our boundaries a little bit. So I would like to make, like, again, I support Chatham and Wellsburg. I know we've got big crime rates in those areas, but I can't support the other ones. So I was hoping that we could do a friendly amendment to this and break up Chatham, Wallsburg in one vote, and then Blenheim, Ridgetown, Tilbury, Dresden, Wheatley, and Townsville in another vote.
No.
I would support, like I said, Chatham, Wallsburg, but
Councillor Allen.
Bondi? Chief, is there many other municipalities that are doing this? Or are we kind of like the first?
Oh, no. Oh, no, through you, Mr. Mayor. Vast majority, we did an environmental scan, an operational environmental scan, conducting the research for this. Many of the municipalities, certainly even municipalities in southwestern Ontario, for example, London and Windsor, close proximity to us, all have CCTVs. A lot of people just think it's the larger municipalities of Toronto and the Golden Horseshoe area or Ottawa, and that is not necessarily the case.
Councillor Bondi, followed by Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Well, sadly, this is the world we live in, right? I kind of assume I'm getting videoed wherever I go, but yeah. But my question is, can we go to the slide where it breaks down like the 5-year grand total?
Right there.
That one.
Yep.
Just for my own understanding, the capital, well, the 1.9 figure, is that what we paid for the, like, round one? And we're, or no?
No, through you, Councillor, or through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bondi. No, that is a projected cost. If we were to do an apples-to-apples comparison, Councillor, this would cost us with our current supplier, with the old ad hoc system, the static system, with the fiber connectivity, we would be looking at $1.9 million. With this new supplier, new technology, we've been able to reduce that cost from 1.9 million to 875,000.
Right, so you're showing us this to let us know what a good deal we're getting?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. As far as the operating cost, because this is, I think, solely a tool for the police, does this roll into the police budget next year? Like after this initial strategic reserve purchase of the equipment, like will the operating costs, any additional thing, will that come out of the police budget going forward?
Through you, Mr. Mayor? No, what we've proposed is that much like our emergency communication center, we will manage the system, but it will be owned by the municipality.
Okay, but the municipality kind of does own the police, right? Like, we fund you, like.
That is correct, Councillor.
So why don't you just put it in the police budget?
It's all, I guess, at the end of the.
Don't arrest me for saying we own you.
No. To your point, Councillor, at the end of the day, I would suggest, yeah, it's all coming from the same pot.
Right, same taxpayer, right?
Yeah, same taxpayer base, yes.
So I'm just curious, why wouldn't it just go into the police budget? Wouldn't it just be simpler to, categorize it in the police budget? Because it's sort of a police car, right? Like you're the only guy.
Chief, I think Steve wants to comment on that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So the ongoing costs would be included in the police budget as part of the annual update, along with the the revenue from the grants that we expect to receive. So it would actually be for this term of the multi-year budget, other than the initial capital and the one-time operating cost for 2024, there'd be no tax increase expected for 25, 6, or 7, because we do expect the increase in grants to cover the operating costs. So, but it would be included in the police budget.
Okay, great, that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Scotchy, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Actually, my questions aren't really directed to Chief Khan. I do appreciate the conversation. I do have one for you at the end, but maybe to either Mr. Brown or to Mr. Dubin. And I could be very wrong on this comment, but I thought that our strategic reserve, though, was starting to get kind of light, because I often find that when we're doing these things are coming to council, often we pick on the strategic reserve, and I think that this would probably assume like over a third of what's left in there. Isn't this already under like $2 million, Mr. Brown? Like after after we take this, will it now be under $2 million?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if this were to be funded out of here, the one-time capital and the operating for 2024, by the end of 2024, we'd be at approximately $1.7 million balance within that reserve.
Yeah, so that my question is just related to, because a lot of times when things hit the floor, and a lot of times when we're addressing different strategic avenues or municipality, we're utilizing this reserve. And I guess just the question to maybe Mr. Dubin or to Mr. Brown is that how rapidly are we replenishing this strategic reserve? Because if it's something that we are identifying on a very regular basis, and as everyone can attest to here, this is a reserve that's kind of, I would say, attacked on a regular basis, and how often are we replenishing that? Not associated with this, but just for future endeavors when we're trying to look for funds and strategic ways to move our municipality forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every year, we do put an allocation in from the budget. By the time we get to the end of the multi-year, 1% of taxes will be going into that reserve annually. So by 2027, all else being equal, there'll be roughly $2.4 million annually being put into that reserve. And then a lot of times, if we have a surplus at the end of the year, one of the recommendations through that the final variance is to put additional monies into that reserve as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to ensure that we are looking at that, because as you can see, if we're taking this type of money out, $2 million seems like a lot, but it really isn't. And then just the last question I did have to Chief Khan is that if there is any cost savings, like is there any reserves that would kind of fit the police reserves that would fit this type of purchase, or is it just really because it is like a municipal property and it's a partnership that it would be expected to come out of like the reserves that we do have?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sakachi. As you indicated, on a go-forward basis, yeah, it would be coming from the municipal reserves. We do have reserves. We have approximately 11 reserves. I can think of one that this would align or be congruent with, but as you've indicated, the initial plan is as you stated.
Can I just clarify a point that you just made, Councillor Scotch? You mentioned the cost of $2 million. It's not $2 million. This is kind of a confusing slide. If you look at the 1.9, that is.
I understand. No,
sorry, I just heard you say $2 million.
No. I was referring to the $2 million that we're replenishing the reserve in.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just saying if we're identifying it on a regular basis for something this large, $2 million isn't a significant. I understand the cost difference between on the report what was projected costs and what we actually came down to. So I do get that. I guess, Mr. Dubin, if there is additional money in the future, that would be council direction. If we were to allocate a little bit more money into the strategic reserve, then that would be something that would come maybe at a future meeting of council or budget time.
Yeah, that's correct. Through your worship, that would be done through budget. And as Mr. Brown said, some of the money that we use to supplement our strategic reserve comes from surplus. So we haven't reported yet on what our surplus was in previous years, so that may solve your issue. Alternatively, we'll definitely address it through the budget process.
That's it. Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and thank you, Chief Khan.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor. I actually would just like to thank you for bringing this report. I do believe some of this probably stemmed from Councillor Hall and my motion to include Wallaceburg into the pilot project that was taking place in Chatham. I know personally from our community, we've had a lot of issues in our downtown core. I can think of one store owner that's probably had his place broken into 4 or 5 times within the last year or two. Apparently, his product must be easy to put out on the market for those wishing to have a life through crime, I guess. I'll put it that way. But I really want to thank you, and I'm really happy to see that the other communities are included, because for as much as I know it is needed within our community and how much our business owners in our downtown core want it, I would think that the business cores in all of our communities, regardless of their size, would want the same service and protection. And, you know, if it didn't happen today, it would happen down the road, but I'd much rather see it be put into place and have that additional service and security for those business owners and in those locations throughout Chatham-Kent. So again, thank you very much. Very informative report, and I appreciate you being here to bring it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Harrigan?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Thank you very much, Chief, for your presentation. I think, you know, especially seeing some of that imaging in Wheatley, I imagine that crime in that community has certainly increased, or at least been a significant concern for community members since the explosion, and we've seen some changes to that downtown core. So from a counselor and a community perspective, I think I'm reassured by the audits that are in place, and think that our community members, and in particular our BIA members and organizations, will be very appreciative of this should it move forward. The questions that I have, and perhaps you can move the slide to the recommendation slide, are around the reserve sources, and this may builds a little bit on what Councillor Sakachi and a little bit of what Councillor Jubinville was asking earlier. Why are we choosing the municipal strategic reserve when there might be a police reserve that could be pulled from or cost shared for the capital costs of this? And perhaps I'd like to hear from yourself, but then also maybe from Steve Brown or our CAO.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would definitely defer that question to Mr. Brown initially, and then I can add some further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the items is that this really came from council asking for police to implement this, so that's really where the cost has been associated. When you do look at the police reserves, a lot of them really are attributed to for a specific reason, so there's not much flexibility in what the reserves are, and the balance of their reserves are substantially lower than what we would have in our strategic development reserve.
And if the police services has a surplus at the end of the year, similar to the municipality, would our policy be that the police board surplus bolsters their reserves in the way that our municipal surplus or department goes to our reserves? Is that the reserve policy that's in place?
So the reserve policy we have, police keep 50% of their surplus, and the municipality retains 50% of the police surplus.
Okay. And Chief Khan, you indicated there was one reserve of your 11 that potentially could align up with it, because I certainly appreciate that some of them are very specific to, you know, benefits and things like that. Which reserve is that you had in mind that was aligned?
New initiatives. New initiatives would be the one that it would be somewhat congruent with. To your point, though, Councillor, remember that when we went through the multi-year budget, we committed to council that we would provide $500,000 back to council from our surplus.
Okay, thank you. I'm just reviewing the different police budgets. I don't have the new initiatives one at my fingertips.
Name off, it's within the first three. If you start from the left and move right, I'll tell you which one it is.
911 evaluation,
Nope.
business plan, communication center, health benefits, police issues, police litigation, police mandatory issues, police QM life cycle are the discretionary reserves in the budget.
No, there's more than that.
Okay.
There's also a business case, or I should say a strategic plan reserve, and that includes our new initiatives. So in-car cameras, ALPRs, body-worn cameras, and as I indicated, it kind of aligns with those initiatives.
Right. I think the way in the budget, it categorizes the reserves by your use, right? They're operational, discretionary, they're mandatory, that sort of thing. So, all right. So because it's in the recommendation, that staff are supportive of this being pulled from the strategic reserve. I do think in the future, I would like to see with the police service budget, I know that we as a council sometimes struggle with understanding where the police service budget ends, where ours begins, what and how those reserves are used and how that takes place. So, you know, I would expect or hope that as we do more of these, that we see a bit more cost sharing for these new initiatives between police service reserves and our municipal reserves, because I think taxpayers like to know, and when they see different budget lines, when you see police budget and police reserves, are thinking that's what's going towards those police issues. That's not to say I'm not supportive of these issues. I think this is a very important project, but I think we need to be careful about how we assign reserve spending as a council.
Okay, last words, Councilor McGrail, and then over to Councilor Crew.
Perfect. Thank you, through you, Mayor Caniff. Everyone around this horseshoe has heard from their communities in regards to the need for more policing. We can all agree on that, I think. I absolutely consider this tool an advancement in the requested policing. So I am very much supportive in all of these communities receiving this much-needed resource. So I will be moving forward. On-the-ground boots is very much a thing we need, but there's tools we need to bring together all the information. And I think this is very much needed in all of these communities that were presented tonight. So thank you.
Councilor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just quickly, I just want to comment on why I wouldn't separate the communities out, because I believe that we all deserve the same level of service. And the chief had his analyst put together why we need it and where we need it. So that's the reason that I just gave a hard no, because we are Chatham-Kent, and it's expensive. There's no getting out of it, but how do you put a price tag on your feelings of safety in your community? I want to comment on the boots on the ground too. Councillor Jubenville asked that question, and I'm surprised the chief didn't say that, but the Deloitte audit and council funded, we are really working hard to increase the frontline officers and being very creative, and it's just not as easy as just putting them out there. I wish we could, but this will give us some more eyes to assist with making our community safer. So that's all I want to say. I'm going to support this, and that's the reason that I didn't separate them, because we're told all the time we are one community, so separating us just to cut a few out isn't the right answer.
With that, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Doyle?
No.
Councillor Hall?
Yes.
And Councillor Wright?
Yes.
All votes are in, and motion passes 13-2.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Sorry?
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Just once again, I want to thank council for your time and consideration surrounding this initiative. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to item 18, corporate services.
18A, procedure to fill vacancy on council.
Councillor Wright, I'll go to you.
Yes, I'd like to move that with an amendment.
And the amendment is?
The amendment would be that we have an election instead of an appointment. And then the final one would be whatever we do this time is done forever the same way, so we're not going through this the next time. Have two amendments.
Okay, so you're putting a new motion to say for a by-election, okay?
And then the final one is that whatever we decide tonight, how it's done, that's the way it's done from here on in.
Councillor Wright, I think we'd have a hard time locking in council to future decisions. If something happens next council, we can't tell them how to do it. So I think that would be a hard one to put in there. Madam Clerk?
So I agree with Mr. Mayor with regards to locking in a new council. If council was speaking about a policy with regards to how to move forward, council could direct administration for that, but I do just want to indicate that administration would not support that for similar reasons. You're binding a future council into how to fill the position. It doesn't happen often, and it's the Municipal Act that outlines the democratic process. So there could be different variables next time, and that would be my comments for that.
Okay, then we'll put the one in then for an election.
Councillor Wright, can you see the motion that's on there, the Office of the Councillor, Ward 3? Can you see it? Okay, perfect. Councillor Doyle, will you second that?
Yes, I will.
Okay, Councillor Wright, the floor is yours for any other comments. Then Councillor Doyle, then I got Councillor Juvenile and Councillor Allen so far.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. To begin with, on the cost of an election, is Mr. Quinton there tonight?
Steve Brown's here in his place.
This 75,000, would it be coming out of reserves for an election?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the 75,000 will be coming out of the election life cycle reserve.
So is it costing the taxpayers in the end, or is it just coming out of the reserves?
The original source of the funding in the reserve did come from the taxpayers, but there'd be no tax increase as a result of this. Currently, at least in 2024, there'd be no tax increase as a result of this by-election.
Okay, thank you for that. Originally, when this was brought up about this election, there was 3 points. We'd either stay status quo and leave it the way it is without replacing Mr. Pensineau, or we'd appoint somebody, or we'd have an election. Now, it looks like here that it's getting to be a popularity contest to appoint somebody instead of having an election. If we wanted to have somebody come in on popularity, we should have the East Kent voters decide that. It shouldn't be, we shouldn't have had a name in here. There's no way there should have been a name anywheres in this. It should have been the runner-up. There should not have been a name in this at all, anyway, anyhow. To me, that's not good, because now we're doing a popularity instead of the true meaning of an election. The other thing, if she does get appointed, which is good for her, but the people will be hard on her. And I know the people out there at East Kent, and they will be hard on her. And the people of East Kent really would like to have an election to choose who they want. I'll leave it at that, and I'll hear everybody else, and I'll come back. Thank you.
Judy, you want to respond to that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I just wanted to clarify one thing. If I understood you correctly, you indicated that there were 3 options. One would be to leave Councillor Pensineau's spot vacant, have an appointment, or a by-election. And if that is what you were indicated, I just want to correct that there is not an option to keep Councillor Pensineau's spot vacant. We do have to declare that this evening, but the option according to the Municipal Act is either an appointment or a by-election.
Hey, thank you for that, Judy, but I believe that come from when me and the mayor were talking one day, so I just took it as that the way it was, so.
Sorry, Councillor Ray, I'll clarify. This was when I very first asked, and I said there's 3 options. The other option, you don't have to replace it, but it has to be 3 months or something, Judy, that so there's the requirement. It's out there, but it has to be within 3 months of the next election, then you can just leave it empty. So to clarify that, and that was discounted out because it's 2 years out. 2.5, yes, sorry, 2.5, thank you.
My misunderstanding on that, sorry about that.
Okay, Councillor Doyle. Okay, Councillor Doyle, followed by Councillor Juvenile.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I support a by-election for sure. Marina's a great person from what I've heard, a lot of the community involvement, but getting a seat on council without being elected isn't democracy. And I guess there's no price to put on democracy. So to keep that going, and there's very well people that would have ran had Councillor Wright or Councillor Pinsnow not re-ran, because they would have had a better chance of getting in. So now, if they know there is a seat open, this might lead to other people running as opposed to just the third, fourth, and fifth candidates before. So I am 100% in favor of a by-election.
Just to note, we will be splitting these two between 1 and 2, so we'll be voting on each separately. Councillor Juvenile, followed by Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to start my commenting by prefacing my comments to preclude any perceptions of speaking negatively about Marina McDonald. My comments are not to speak against her character or her abilities, or in any way enact to dissuade people from thinking of her as a worthy and good candidate for Ward 3 East Kent. I'm here to speak up for democracy. Some of you may roll your eyes or snicker, but democracy is something that we should be upholding every opportunity we have to do so at any cost. If you don't agree with me, just ask someone who comes or hails from an anti-democratic society, and they will tell you how valuable and precious democracy is. Knowing that there are two options that administration put forward, either the appointment of Ms. McDonald or a by-election, I'm wondering why the other two options that are also included were not put forward, which is appointing another well-deserving community member or requesting applications from interested candidates for council to decide on. While I'm not in favor of either of the latter two, I'm perplexed that administration even became involved in the political process, and they even made a recommendation. In my opinion, this was very biased, and it should be the sole decision of council in how we proceed with filling the empty council seat in Ward 3. Now that administration has made their recommendation, they have undoubtedly influenced some members of council, and I find fault in that. We have received an abundance of emails both in favor of a by-election and in favor of an appointment. Ms. McDonald sounds like a wonderful person, which brings me to the next point, that by receiving all of these emails, it was starting to sound like a popularity contest where we were taking part in an online vote for the best candidate. It actually felt a little awkward. With that being said, many of the emails in support of Ms. McDonald came from all 6 wards in Chatham-Kent, while the greater percentage of emails in favor of a by-election came from the constituents in Ward 3, East Kent. Many people are concerned about the cost of a potential $75,000 to run a big by-election. I'm not quite sure where the $75,000 came from, or if it was just an arbitrary number, but in the event that it does cost $75,000, the tax implication of all CK taxpayers would be $1.32 to each taxpayer. This cost was verified through our finance department, so it's $1.32. So there are a lot of people concerned about the cost. By appointing a person as councillor, we would be potentially silencing the voice of 2,049 people who voted for Steve Pinsnow and 1,727 people who voted for John Wright, but they may not have voted for Marina. This does not sit well with me, knowing we could be potentially disenfranchising thousands of East Kent voters. If we run a by-election, Ms. McDonald will have an opportunity to run again, along with any newcomers who may have stood back because they were happy to vote for Steve Pinsnow and John Wright. This will provide a new and equal opportunity for everyone who is interested. It will also eliminate any shadow of a doubt as to who the most suited and competent candidate would be in East Kent to be the representing councillor. In conclusion, I implore my colleagues to vote and uphold democracy tonight. It's not a large expense, and it will satisfy everyone's concerns. Thank you.
Councillor Allen, followed by Councillor Crew.
Through you, Mayor. I'm not going to support the amendment, but I was originally going to support the recommendation by administration. To me, Marina has done more than enough in her community involvement, sits on many boards. You know, she ran a fair, strong campaign that, you know, finished third behind 2 very strong incumbents. To me, this is kind of an easy decision. I think she garners a seat here at the Horseshoe, and I'd be happy to support that.
Councillor Crew, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I am not going to support Councillor Wright's amendments, except for number 1. And I have a couple questions for Judy. So I've been here for a minute. I remember, I think 2002, 2004, whatever that term was, Councillor Ann Coulter started out in that ward, Ward 6, took a job with the municipality, and you have the timelines. She came in 6th, or she was one of the top 6, and she had a seat for a short period of time when she went to work for the municipality at the Board of Health, Public Health. And then, so Councillor Doug Arbor took over, was appointed by council. So that's what we did then. And unfortunately, Councillor Arbor passed away shortly after in his term. So he was 7th. So Councillor Don Clark was appointed again. So there was 3 appointments in 1 term by this council. So it's not a precedent-setting thing. This has happened, and in 1 term, we've appointed 3 councillors to sit at this seat, correct?
Yes, that information is correct.
And can you tell me what other communities are doing right now? Now, I believe we've had a brief discussion. There's been some with provincial electees, some deaths, a couple of deaths on one particular council already. So can you tell us about what's happened in the province?
Sure. Just recently, in the past few months, Kitchener was faced with the same situation that Chatham-Kent is. One of their municipal councillors became the MPP, and they made an appointment to their Ward 10 from the next person in line from their municipal election. Also in Sudbury, unfortunately, they had 2 councillors that passed away within weeks of each other, one from Ward 2 and one from Ward 3. And in researching that today, they both appointed the next person as the runner-up from their last election also.
Thank you. Condolences to Sudbury. That's awful. I think that this is what is the norm. A by-election at this point, we have over half of a term left. And I think that, I don't know Marina. I don't know her. This is where she landed, 3rd. And that's what's been done in the past. We haven't had by-elections. We did have one for when Mayor Erickson passed away and Mayor Gagne was elected. But that was the only one, and that's a mayor, so different. But I'm going to support if this fails, and I'm going to support appointing the next person in line, Miranda McDonald, and I hope I'm saying her name right. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a list of 5 other speakers. Councillor C. McGregor, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, and through the mayor. I'd just like to make comment, and thank you, Marge, for bringing that up, because I wasn't thinking there was 3 in that term. I think my husband was sitting on that term, and I do remember when Mr. Clark came on, so I did remember that piece of history. So thank you for bringing that into attention to the fact that it's not only been our practice, but it is the practice that is out there. You know, we get a lot of emails and from a lot of things, and when I started seeing the emails come in, and this is just since yesterday, I decided to start to keep track of the emails that were coming in. And you know, I heard one councillor say that it was a popularity contest out there. Well, that's the way most of our issues that come to council, we end up with a barrage of either supporting or not supporting direction of council. And so I do take, and I do appreciate everybody that took the time to email. So I do take that into account. It may not make my final decision, but it certainly does play a part in the decision I make. And so just out of interest and for the numbers people, since yesterday, I've received 67 in favor of Marina McDonald and 37 for by-election. So I see a very strong message being sent through to council, that a lot of it, and a lot of people don't want to spend the extra money to do a by-election when there is a very viable, strong candidate. And yes, she was third, but she did run a very strong campaign because the other two that were after that were very low. She was very close up in the top of the running. And I have met Marina a time or two, and knowing the work that she does, I don't think you could find anybody more committed. She's on municipal council or municipal committees, and the amount of time she throws into community, I don't think we could ask or want anyone better that doesn't have the community interest at heart. So I obviously am not going to support number 2 of this recommendation. And, you know, I do hope that this one fails and that we get back to that and that we can actually move on without the lengthy process of what a by-election or the cost of a by-election would take. So, and just to one comment, and which kind of concerned me a little bit, was the mention of that, should there not be a by-election, that the people in Ward 3 would be very difficult and very hard on the choice of us appointing Councillor Marina. Well, I would say that since this council has been in place in a year and a half, many people, not all, many people of Chatham-Kent have been very hard on all councillors on many issues. It's a part of the job. And it's a part of being in the position of a politician and representing your community. So I would hope that this fails and that everybody or the majority would see to appointing Marina McDonald to sit at this table with us and around the horseshoe. Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor McGrail.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate Mr. Pinsonneau on the by-election win, and for the reason that we have a vacant seat here. I think that's wonderful that we will have somebody in Queen's Park who has been around the Chatham-Kent table and knows very closely our issues. So Steve, if you're listening, look out. The text messages are going to come from everyone around here. I want to comment some of the thought process that I had when I came to this report and my decision tonight. And the first is around how local municipal elections work in comparison to provincial or federal systems where there are bureaucratic organizations like Elections Canada and Elections Ontario. And so certainly staff infrastructure behind that, whereas at the municipality, our clerk's office is prepared to run an election once every 4 years, but there's certainly strain on what that would mean to do a by-election. So as a result of that, municipalities have our elections once every 4 years, and there's a significant amount of effort that goes into raising awareness about the election, allowing people to vote online or in person on election day, on gathering volunteers and participants to do the poll stations, and all of that is to support democracy. And in Ward 3, where we currently have an open seat, there was a 34.5% voter turnout as a result of all of that work and effort. So in municipalities, we typically have a low voter turnout to begin with, and we have actually seen that when there are less candidates running, which we saw in Ward 5, where voters were only voting for the mayor, there was a minuscule turnout of, I believe, 16%. And so we have to ask ourselves, if we were to run a by-election, would it be the democracy that we hope for and achieve or try to achieve every 4 years? And I think while we would aspire for it to be, pragmatically, I don't think it would. And so then I looked at my own results. Top candidate in Ward 1, second candidate with Councillor Anderson, and both of us got just barely over 1,300 votes in Ward 1. Marina McDonald received 1,161 votes, so really only a few hundred votes behind 2 elected councillors, or 1 in 5 people from Ward 3. So while there were some emails that were sent to us and some deputations suggesting that a democracy would not be, this would be a slight against democracy, I actually disagree. I believe the democratic process took place when we held our election for this term in 2022. I believe that the numbers that came in as a result of the polls showed that 1 in 5 voters actually chose Councillor Marina McDonald as a candidate. And that's really great data that we have. I don't know if we were to put $75,000 into an election, we would get the Democratic turnout that we would be looking for, which then further risks the confidence that we would have in that candidate. So I very much appreciated the report. I appreciated the public information we have about our 2022 election results, which are on our municipal website. And I will not be in favor of recommendation 2 and will be supporting the staff recommendations if Mayor Kenneth will entertain other motions following this discussion. Thank you.
Councilor McGrail, followed by Councilor Sakachi.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kenneth. I had the opportunity last Thursday and Friday when I was with my SWIFT group to, to survey those other municipalities and if they've had this, issue before and how they dealt with. And obviously there's many different ways you can deal with it, but the majority definitely was by appointment. So when I started getting the emails yesterday and today, I really myself, and I can only speak for myself, took the faces away. It doesn't matter if it's Marina. It's number 3 to me, okay? And it doesn't matter who's running for a by-election. It's a by-election. So I really try to remove myself from the person, right? And to try and make a proper decision based on what is good for Chatham-Kent as a whole. But also acknowledging Ward 3 and their wants and needs. And through all those emails and conversations I did have, I feel I do now have a good grasp of what, what the majority want is. So I too cannot tonight support this, and I will be voting yes for the other recommendation going forward, because I think tonight I've heard and I've listened, but I'm not sure I'm hearing when we hear, the majority, what that really means, and if that's inclusive of everyone that represents Ward 3. So, thank you.
Councilor Sakachi, followed by Councilor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Actually, I decided I wasn't going to speak on this. I wanted to hear what all the other councilors said and, and not influence anybody else's decision by my words. But there was a couple comments that I just wanted to kind of laminate. I think that when we're making difficult decisions, it's really important that we take the reports that we have in front of us and the recommendations to look at that. And knowing that the primary responsibility of the municipal clerk is to manage the municipal documents as well as, conducting the election and basically ensuring that, information is accessible to the public. And providing leadership. So I just wanted to commend Judy that I know this is a very difficult conversation. I know that this is not an easy thing. We've received lots and lots of emails. I know that this isn't something that any clerk wants to do, mid-season. But I just really wanted to say thank you to the clerk and to administration, even if I don't agree on a lot of times, for providing us reports that provide recommendations for us to make the best decisions on fact of our municipality. So thank you for that, and looking forward to seeing what the final task is and toll on this report. Thank you.
Councilor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I agree with a lot of the comments made so far this evening and appreciate Councillor Sakachi's recent remarks as well. I do think that when we view this decision and we hear words like undemocratic come up, I think it's important to address that. And I do think that, as Councillor Harrigan mentioned, this is the most democratic way to approach this, is to respect the results of the 2022 election. And in that election, there was a third place finisher, very close to the second place finisher. And all of us around this table ran in that 2022 election. And if we appoint the third place finisher, they also ran in the 2022 election, which was a free and fair vote. And there was a number of opportunities for individuals to put their names forward in that election, knowing that they would be serving for this 4-year term of council if they were successful. I think I do have a bit of a unique perspective, as, like Councillor Pinsnow, I chose to run for another level of office, albeit very unsuccessfully. And as part of making that decision, I think anyone that does that, or anyone that may need to leave for a purpose of employment or health, recognizes they have a responsibility to their voters, and that weighs in your decision as well. And I think when you make that decision, you also know that if you vacate your seat, you know the process for appointments. So I think that we have to recognize that life does happen, that this has happened across Ontario. This has happened to people that served in this chamber, and we need to respect election results as they happen every 4 years municipally. And I think that the best path forward is to respect common practice in Ontario, respect the 2022 municipal election results, and to make this appointment so that we can continue to move forward as a council with representation in all wards.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just to start with, if we listen to, the emails that came in regarding this, as we've counted them, or some of us have, thank you, Carmen. So if we did, we wouldn't be moving to the Sears building, I can tell you that much, because we got overwhelmingly bombed with that, and here we are. So I don't pay much attention to, well, I do, I read them, but I don't gauge my decision on them because not everybody emails, right? So it's part of the thing, and the other part that I think is very important in this is we don't know where the emails came from, and the only people that really are impacted by this are the people in East Kent. So if the emails are from other parts of the community, that's nice, they have their opinion, but the impact is really only felt in one ward. So I support this. I don't think, this is not the easiest way to do this, clearly. It's more work. I've never met Ms. McDonald, so I don't have an opinion really, but that being said, I think it would be a fair race, and I've heard from 3 legitimate people that have said they would like to run in what perhaps may be a bylaw, a by-election. And of course, I'd say, well, why didn't you run in the first place, right? And they said, well, we didn't think we had a chance against the incumbent. So, fair answers, and all the same answer from all 3 people. So I think it's in the spirit of absolute fairness. Ms. McDonald's probably got about $100,000 worth of free advertising in the last 24 hours. But I would support a by-election. I just think it's the fairest thing to do. It's not the cheapest, not the easiest, but to me it's the fairest. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I'll go to Councillor Doyle and then Councillor Wright for final remarks before the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess to me this just comes down to being the most fair, like Councillor Bondi said. So again, fairest thing to do, get back in a by-election and win it and win your seat there. And for the majority of the emails, like that people were talking about, because we got a lot of them today and the last couple of days, and I read them all. It did seem like the ones I saw from Ward 3, the majority of those ones wanted by-election, and a lot of the other ones were friends of Ms. McDonald and acquaintances and people that have worked with her in business that didn't say they were part of Ward 3. So I think this is, if we're doing what Ward 3 wants to do and what our constituents want to do, I believe Ward 3 wants a by-election. So that's how I'll be voting.
Councillor Wright, you have the final words before we go to vote.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'll keep it short. The people on Ward 3, like ever since Steve announced he was leaving, I've had lots of them, over hundreds of them, talk to me about an election. Not today, I finally had somebody call in support of Marina. I've had no calls in supporting her, but I don't know her. I've only met her twice, but it's the fact that the people want an election. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, we will go to vote now. We're voting on number 1, the office of Councillor, Ward 3, East Kent, be declared vacant.
Councillor Wright?
Yes.
Councillor Doyle?
Yes.
Councillor Hall?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0.
Second, we're going to vote on is administration be directed to prepare a bylaw for council approval ordering a by-election for Ward 3.
Can we just, okay, a bylaw for a by-election, got it.
Councillor Hall?
No.
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Wright,
Yes.
all votes are in, motion fails, 5 to 10.
Okay, can I have, given that, can I have someone that, another motion? Councillor B. McGregor.
I'll move the initial recommendations in the report.
So we're moving item 2 and 3. Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Crew. Any other questions we haven't already talked about? Seeing that, we'll put this to vote. We're going to vote number 2 and 3 together.
Counselor Wright,
No.
Counselor Doyle,
No.
Counselor Hall,
Yes.
there we go. I was just waiting for one more. All votes are in, motion passes 11 to 4.
Councillor Crew.
I'd just like to ask a question about the process now. What happens? Does the clerk contact Ms. McDonald, Councillor McDonald? She'll be sworn in?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, I will make the phone call tomorrow to see if Marina McDonald is interested. If so, the clerk's office will work on a swearing in, probably, if possible, by the May 27th, maybe at the beginning of the May 27th meeting. And if she is not interested and declines the option, then we'll go to number 3, where I would come back to council for a bylaw to prepare for a by-election.
I may add, I'll be a spoiler in this one, that it was on the CKSY that she was saying she was interested, and I did call her today to confirm that she was interested. I don't want to go through this whole debate and find out, no, she wasn't interested. So yes, she had expressed interest. So. Okay, we'll move on to item 19, Finance, Budget, Information Technology. Oh, thank you. Item 20, Development Services.
20A, Chatham-Kent Agricultural Advisory Committee.
Councillor Juvenville, this is an information report, so you had a question?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just had a question for Mr. McAllister. I'm very happy to see this committee finally coming to fruition. This will give a public voice to our agricultural friends, which has been missing for a few years, so I'm happy to see this coming. Just a question. I know you have the membership groups included, Kent Federation of Agriculture, Christian Farmers, National Farmers Union, and the Grain Farmers. I'm just wondering if we can be informed as to who the individual members are, so that any of us any rural councillors will be able to, have conversations with them or whatnot, and who the staff members would be involved as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, just a little context. So when we went out, we reached out to the larger farm organizations in the community, and essentially asked them to get back to us on what their thoughts were in terms of membership on this committee. So we do have it's either generally composed of 2 board of directors or delegates from the Kent Federation of Agriculture, the Christian Farmers Association, the National Farmers Union, and the Grain Farmers of Ontario, District 2 obviously being Kent, Chatham-Kent. So specifically, we had an initial meeting in the end of March, and the membership is Gus Tierney from the Chatham-Kent Essex Christian Farmers. We have Jay Cunningham and Brad Snobelin, who's the current president of both from the Kent Federation of Agriculture. We have Rock Gellick and Ed Skakrichis from the National Farmers Union, and Emily Charbonneau-Howe and Mark Houston from the Grain Farmers of Ontario. And at that first meeting, the committee appointed Brad Snobelin as the chair and Rock Gellick as the vice. In terms of administrative support, that my Department of Development Services will be preparing the immediate administrative report, and will attend all of the meetings, but we may also be relying on other departments and staff members depending on the topic that the committee wants to discuss. So, and we agreed that we would work on future agendas and topics, obviously ahead of time, to give everybody time. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Just one more question. I noticed that it's not going to involve members of council, but how do we move forward in the opportunity that we can have council members become part, or members become part of this committee?
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. What we can commit to do is we establish an agenda and the times for the meeting. Certainly, we can advise all of council of the meeting dates and times, and be open for discussion. We did agree that the membership did want to have their meetings during normal business hours. So right now, we suggested mid-late morning, probably 10 a.m. start for meetings. So at this point, we just established the next meeting date, and we're going to kind of get into what works for the groups in the fall. Yeah.
So there is a potential for having council members become part of this group?
Yeah, maybe just to clarify at this point in time, and maybe the clerk may want to step in here if need be, but the direction from council was to establish an administrative committee for this term of council, but certainly it's probably a discussion we can have before the next term of council if we want to formally make this a committee of council, where that would have to occur, Judy, just probably a few months before the next election, whether council wanted to establish this as a formal committee of council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 21, infrastructure and engineering services.
21B, dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation, 2023 to 2024.
Councillor Sakachi and Councillor B. McGregor, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved, Mayor Caniff.
Seconded.
Councillor Sakachi, you had comments, questions?
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. Mr. Brown, a lot of times when these funds are announced, the perception in the community is that these are like new funds, or this is money that we're receiving that's new that can go to additional services. But can you just kind of comment how the funds have went since like 2014 in regards to any type of increases, or if we've just basically status quo for people that hasn't had the opportunity to read the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these funds are built into the budget, and they have remained fairly consistent over the past 10 years with very little in the way of increases, and certainly not to match CPI.
Thank you. And just the only reason why, just for council's sake, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is about a month ago, when the carbon tax was being discussed at length, I decided to reach out to the budget team and just to touch base with them to see roughly what that kind of cost that occurs to the municipality when it comes to just from an operational standpoint for our fleet services vehicles. And Mr. Brown's team was very diligent in getting back to me and indicated that just in carbon tax, we're spending over $300,000 a year that is basically going back to the government in the upper levels of government and other force. So I'm just, while this number hasn't increased, really it's almost like we're getting less funds. Is that kind of how you, although it's a totally different program, there's no way to recover that cost back that we're paying out in carbon tax, is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So while they're not related whatsoever, we as a municipality do not receive a carbon tax rebate like many individuals do. So that is an additional cost.
Sorry, is your speaker on? I don't see the light. It's on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
So unlike residents who are able to get a carbon tax rebate, us as a municipality, we do not. So that is additional cost that is put on the taxpayers, correct?
So essentially the money that we're receiving is reducing instead of increasing if it's even by it staying status quo.
That'd be correct.
Mayor Kane, I just thought it was very important to bring a light the fact that these aren't new money. This isn't new money, sorry, and the challenges that go into, from a transit standpoint and the costs associated with operating them because of the carbon tax is increasing on a regular basis. And I think it's really important that we keep bringing this to the attention of the public so people are aware of how much more it costs to operate on a daily basis. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that point, that inflation, we haven't got an increase in that in a number of years, and the costs have went up significantly, and now with the carbon tax, they're taking more. So it's a very good point that it sounds like a lot of money when you just announce we got this money, and I get questioned every year, oh, that's great, we got new money. No, that's not new money. That's the same money we've been getting for several years. We appreciate the money, but the municipal taxpayers are paying the difference every year on all those things. So. Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Doyle
Yes.
and Councillor Wright.
Yes.
Thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes 14-0. Next report is 21D, motion by Councillor Bondi, proposed removal of trees from Erio and Victoria Ave.
Councillor Bondi, floor is yours.
You say that with such enthusiasm. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. All righty. Okay, so I'll just start with number one. Sorry, I, Councillor Michael Bondi, move the following motion. That a second opinion regarding the 30 trees on Victoria Avenue slated for removal or potential removal be commissioned to an arborist, any arborist, with the stated emphasis on preservation. Number two, prior to any tree removal in either location, the Ontario Ministry of the Environment, the LTVCA, and the Sydenham Field Naturalists be consulted to determine if roosting, nesting, or migratory habits will be affected. Regulations and laws regarding this practice to be explored and strictly followed. Turkey vultures, screech owls, and many other species of birds call these trees home. Number three, in keeping with the municipality of Chatham-Kent's declaration of a climate emergency, other areas should be assessed to ensure that we are protecting the environment and also ensuring the safety of our citizens. These areas will include, but not be limited to, the O'Neill Natural Preserve, often referred to as Paxton's Bush, CK Dog Park, and all existing parks and officially recognized trails. Upon completion of this assessment, tree management priorities will be determined. And number four, all trees removed by the municipality of Chatham-Kent to be replaced with an acceptable new tree within 12 months. This will not be exclusive to these areas, but will be policy for the entirety of the municipality.
Councillor Juvemil, can I get you to second that, please?
I so second.
Well, thank you.
Councillor Bondi, any comments or thoughts you have?
Yeah, a bit, I guess. So what I'm going to do in this new format that we have, there's basically like a critique from staff, and this is new. I don't like it very much because we never did this before, because I don't feel it's really fair that, this gets out there. I don't have a week and a half to put my opinions out there, but in any event, that's the format we're under. So I think I'll respond to that. That's probably my best bet here. Number one is that the trees on Victoria have been assessed externally twice and internally several times by certified arborists over the past 5 years. Another opinion is likely to lead to similar results that have already been presented to us. Now, I have a copy of the 2018 arborist report. One of the trees, and I just picked a random, that is slated for removal, so this is, a terribly dangerous tree, apparently, that could cause a tremendous amount of grief and problems for people, is, it's on page 31, Municipal Property 225. So in 2018, this tree is healthy and in good standing. The tree boasts a large canopy and high elevation. The tree should be protected under the TPZ policy. Now this one's slated for removal. So there's that. So I don't think, in 5 years, trees have deteriorated much. Obviously, it was likely affected by the small tornado that went down Victoria, well, it went through a lot of the city and did a tremendous amount of damage on Victoria Avenue, which of course I experienced. So, in my opinion though, I would think that whatever was going to come down probably came down, because a lot of stuff came down, and there was some talk of, the trees on Victoria caused an awful lot of work for the municipality. Well, that's the way it goes. And sustained an awful lot of damage. Well, any old growth area in the city that has large old trees, is going to have that. You're not going to see that in yeah, I guess Percentia, you know, a newer subdivision, it doesn't have these old trees. So of course they don't experience the kind of damage that was experienced on Victoria. The Erie thing, well, I removed that from the motion altogether because they don't seem to be interested. And I did go out there and see those trees, and they're generally poplars, which is sort of a scrub tree, and they've kind of got the next generation of trees growing underneath. So, so I think they're fine. Now, the third critique is that staff has had conversations with 12 of the 16 property owners who abut the trees identified for removal. Over 80% agree with the recommendations of the report and understand removal is required. Well, I'm one of those guys because I had the knock on my door. And nobody asked for my opinion. They said, that tree's coming down, which I don't care. Like, it's fine. It's a tree that probably needs to come down. But to say that 80% of the people were agreeing, well, they didn't agree. You didn't have a choice. It's not like, you know, hey, how do you feel about this? It was, we were simply told this is going to happen. So I don't know that, you know, there was an 80% cheerleading squad saying, great, take down these trees. I strongly disagree with that. Number 4, administration is prepared to reach out to these agencies, which is the Ministry of the Environment, the LTVCA, et cetera. And of course, it says that the municipality follows these laws anyway. Well, I would like the Ministry of the Environment to take a look. No tree can be cut down until September 30th anyway, if there's any determination that there's any sort of roosting, and that's apparent from just ground level. You can see it. So I would like the Ministry of the Environment to take a look and see what kind of impact this is going to have. Now, the other kind of thing that I don't really expect this to go anywhere, but I just wanted to make the point of, you know, if we sent an arborist into Paxton's Bush, into the dog park, through the trails, an arborist is looking out for their neck as much as we're looking out for ours. And if they see any fault in a tree, they're going to say, tear it down. It's the easiest thing to do. And it's certainly not going to hurt anybody when it's in a chipper. So my point here is that any old growth area of the city, if it's examined by an arborist who will be liable for his report, only the strongest, most perfect trees are going to survive that analysis. And if I was an arborist, I would do the same thing. But we live with risk. That's the way the human race is. We live with risk. We live with arenas, playgrounds, cars, bicycles. I'd say jungle gyms, but I'm sure we got rid of those because somebody got hurt. But the point is that we live with risk. And to tear down these trees on Victoria Avenue, and yes, I live on Victoria Avenue, and, you know, there's that. So, yeah, is it near and dear to my heart? Sure, I've lived there nearly 25 years. I also hear a lot about it. But those trees, do they drop branches and limbs from time to time? Yes, they do. They're 100 years old. Should we tear them all down because of it? No, because we live with risk. And the chance of...
Councilor Bondi, you've been at 5 minutes, I'll give you another minute.
Oh, come on. You don't do that to anybody.
No, this is one question. This is, so anyways, keep going.
No, it's okay. Okay, well, ding, ding, there goes the alarm. Okay, anyway, that's my point, so I'll leave it there. I guess I have to.
You got another, I'll give you another minute to finish up.
Okay, I'm gonna have to really fish for what to say here. Okay, my point is that if we were to do this in anywhere else in the city, we would cut down a lot of trees. And Victoria was the only street in Chatham that was examined. Now, if we did that examination on King West, Joseph, Elizabeth, we'd end up with the same result. And I get it. Their trees are old, and some of them do need to come down. I've advocated to have trees cut down on Victoria Avenue, and they have been cut down. So I'm not against cutting down harmful, diseased old trees. But these trees, like the one in front of my house, if somebody called me and asked me to look at this tree and they didn't like it and said, will the municipality tear it down, I wouldn't even bother sending an email. Because I'd say, no, it's a perfectly fine tree. It's kind of ugly, and it's a little gnarly, but like there's no way we're going to cut this thing down. But this is one that's slated to come down. This isn't, then there's the maybe list, right? Which is a total of 30 trees. So I just think it's overreach, it's overextension. All I'm asking for is a second opinion. That's it. And somehow it says that would cost $10,000, which is impossible. The whole arborist report was $4,000. I'm asking for about 10% of the I think it's 187 trees or something to that effect. But it's about 10%. So it would cost about $400 just to get a second opinion, because second opinion was given somewhere, Councillor Story told me, in like Kitchener somewhere. And the second arborist report, which was focused on preservation, I'm way past 6 minutes, I know. Okay, that's it. I'm just asking for a second opinion. That's all. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Jubenville, and then you get some words, and then Councillor Scotchy.
Everything he said. No, I support this, and I support a second opinion.
Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. My points are kind of mute now because the comments were really in regards to EREO and all the input that I've heard out there. I just wanted to say that it's not an isolated occurrence on Victoria. The municipality has been very diligent over the course of the last, 6 months or so in a similar exercise in EREO. I can speak to the EREO Community Association, who is very well established in the community. They wanted me to be vocal and tell staff how much they've appreciated the diligence of taking care of the problematic trees and working on a new boulevard plan to establish new growth. I do ask Mayor Caniff and Madam Clerk, if we are voting on this, if we could vote on number 4 separately, as that's something I think is extremely important. But I just wanted to comment to say that this is not something that's just in one specific area of our community.
Okay, I just noticed something in the motion that prior to any tree removal in either location, did you want to get rid of in either location on that?
Oh, yeah, sorry, sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's just to take out the, okay. Councillor Thompson.
Just one clarification, just because of the motion up there still says EREO, for sure that this EREO is completely out of this motion, that's just to clarify?
That last piece of it in either location, then it's completely removed out.
Okay.
So we can just take out those 3 words. Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm no dendrologist, so I don't really have any way to weigh in on what the quality of trees are. It's a good word. I learned it today, actually. Dendrologist. It's the person that studies trees. But what I am curious about, first off, in number 2 there, what happens if we get resounding silence from the Ontario Minister of the Environment?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Cam. I don't know. Like, we haven't asked them, so.
Well, that's my concern, that how long would we wait for an answer? I think that's more of a staff question, really, than anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I would hope that we could call Mr. Pinsino. Right, he owes us one.
Okay. To that end.
Sorry, I think Mr. Dubin want to make a comment there.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I guess if it says to be consulted and we consulted with them and we never heard back, we'd have to come back to council and say, look, we haven't heard back. I don't think the ministry would comment on it at all. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some ministry pointing, whether they say it's a natural heritage issue and it's more of a Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, don't know. But typically they wouldn't get involved in something at a local level unless there was some legislation saying that they had to be involved. So I do think that would be a challenge, but we would bring it back if they didn't consult with us and get further direction from council.
Okay. And then my second comment would be in regards to how does number 3 relate to number 2? One could read it that in number 3 states should be assessed to ensure we're protecting the environment, and that's great. But does that mean we're also going to be, again, consulting with the Ontario Minister of the Environment, the LTVCA, and the Sydenham Field Naturalists?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, the only reason for number 2 is that I and residents are aware of the nesting on Victoria Avenue. So with number 3, I would like us to. Maybe not a bad idea. Well, thank you, Trevor. We'll put that in. But that's not part of the motion, so no.
Okay, don't thank me yet, because if that is the case in number 3, I am concerned about the cost of going to the LTVCA and the Sydenham Field Naturalists on an ongoing basis to look at all of our trees all of the time. I appreciate sitting on that board. They'd probably give us a freebie on a one-off, but if this became a large amount of work, there'd be an increased cost to get the LTVCA's input on the trees, including but not limited to the O'Neill Nature Preserve, CK Dog Park, and all existing parks and officially recognized trails. So that does give me pause, but again, not a dendrologist, so I'll leave it there.
Councillor B. McGregor, followed by Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. First, I have a procedural question relating to number 4. So it says that all trees removed by the municipality be replaced with acceptable new tree within 12 months. And my question, because I fully support it, is that I made the same motion in May of 2020, and we implemented a street tree replacement program in 2022 that's currently ongoing. And I believe we have a report coming back about the first 2 years of that program. So my concern is we're just replicating what we already have in place, and I don't want to confuse that program since it's well underway. From my understanding, we planted over 100 trees. And we're gearing up to increase that planting. So I think it's a great idea, and frankly, for a street like this and for every street in our municipality, thinking of Northland Drive and all these streets that now have mature trees, it's really important that when a tree comes down, we've got to replant one. Someone 100 and some odd years ago had a great thought to plant some trees on Victoria, and we enjoy them now, and I think we need to keep doing that for future generations. So my concern is that we're going to confuse that program if we have a very similar motion, either defeated or passed tonight.
Edward, thoughts on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe councilors are correct that we already have a motion in place. So if it's defeated, what does that mean? Look to Judy. Are we defeating an existing direction at that point?
Sorry, Madam Clerk, can you comment, please?
If number 4 is already an existing policy, I would say to remove it, because if it does fail, then you're countering against the existing policy.
Through you, Mayor Kip. Well, if it's an existing policy, we're not doing it. So, we're not. I think one of my neighbors counted 40 trees have been cut down on Victoria in the last couple of years, or 3, and I haven't seen. Maybe there have been some replacements. I won't say there hasn't, but I know the motivation, and there's kind of the will to do this. Maybe there's not enough money. Maybe the $50,000 doesn't do it. But from what I've seen, again, I can't speak with authority because I do not drive around the entire municipality looking at tree stumps, but I don't think it's happening. Obviously, the purpose here is not to defeat an existing tree planting program. So, I'd pull that if I could get some sort of assurance that it's happening, because it's not where I've looked anyway, okay, just so that we're clear, but if 100 trees have been planted, that's great, but we cut down on average over 200 a year. So we're not at that. So I don't know how to wordsmith it to make it work, but maybe Councilor McGregor can help me out.
Yeah, it's a new program, but maybe we can have a comment from Mr. Brown, just outlining what's going on right now so that we're all a little more comfortable with that program, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. So the tree replacement program in 2022, I believe, was funded for a 2-year pilot project. And I believe the business case at the time said for Public Works to replace every tree we cut. I don't believe it said the word acceptable, and I have some concerns with just how that's phrased. But our current program is we're replacing trees we cut with what we call a 50 millimeter caliper tree. So 5 feet, 6 feet, something in that range. And we've implemented a bunch of different things, and as I mentioned in the notice of motion form, we've tried a couple different ways to plant trees. We've done it internally. We've contracted some out. we've also been toying with different levels of service to offer the community. So in one way, we closed a tender last fall where we planted, I don't have the number in front of me, but 40, 50 trees, where we didn't do a whole lot of public consultation. In other experiments, I'll call it, we did a lot of public consultation, but it's very labor intensive. And so what I mentioned, by coming back to council with kind of a policy and a report on the update of the program to date, is to kind of set those level of service expectations for the community. And I will agree with Councillor Bondi that we have not replaced every tree we have cut since 2022. Because of these trying different things, and it was really a pilot program, it's been hard to scale up, I'll say, and we're trying to work with how much the actual costs are, so we know how much we can put on a tender given our budget. But I will say, we've already closed a tender for this year for all of the trees we cut basically over the winter for the spring planting, and our intentions is to put out another tender this summer for trees we cut in between. So, you know, would I say we're at 100%? No, we're working towards that goal. This is really the first year of the program in full-time existence.
Great, and I'm happy to hear that, and I know that report was coming back, so that's why I wanted to flag it. So I don't know if you did want to remove number 4, I'll give you the floor for a minute.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, I'll remove number 4. I don't want to jeopardize the existing program. I'm glad to hear that it's, you know, moving along. But one thing I would just like to clear up that we've spoken about, but just so that, like, publicly, when we say we were cut down 40 trees and we plant 40 trees, can you just assure everybody that we don't plant 40 trees in a cornfield in Morpeth? You know.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So
well,
yes,
nothing's wrong with that, but
no, that is the intention. However, I will say with a few caveats that were mentioned in the business case at the time, which are if we cut down a tree that's an invasive species, we're not going to be replanting it perhaps like for like species. We also may not be planting in the exact location. And what I mean by that, if we cut a tree down on an intersection that was causing a sightline issue, we're not going to put that tree back right where it was. Now, what we are planning, and I believe this is to be included in the report, is that we are trying to plant in similar areas. So if it was on Victoria on a corner, maybe it's going to go a little further down the street if possible.
Right, you know what I'm getting at, right?
So I understand your concern. No, we're not purchasing 200 seedlings and planting them in a field to counter all the trees that.
Right, and then say, well, we did plant 200 trees. So no, that's good. That's great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and I just did have one more question. So I think this is a good forum to talk about it, but if we could just have some public comment on what our procedures are, what our priorities are when it comes to maintenance and removal and replacement of trees, and whatever we can comment related to that about municipal liability and what the priorities and goals of the tree maintenance program as they are currently are. And that might be for legal, that might be for public works as well.
Councillor Juvemil, are you okay with removing item 4?
Yes, I am.
Seconder, thank you. Okay, I got Councillor Story next. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll answer part of public works strategy because there are some other, and maybe anyone from EMT can comment, there are some other tree initiatives, but to just talk about public works maintenance, up to date, historically, our processes and procedure have been very reactive, complaint-based. We get calls every day about concerns with trees. We do note trees during our road patrols that we have to follow the minimum maintenance standards, and we see a tree that's broken leaning over the road. Obviously, we have to flag that and deal with it quickly, but in general, a proactive assessment, like what has been done on Victoria, has not been historically widely done. It was done on Victoria in 2018 for the tree protection plan. This report and the report for ERIO that we commissioned were out of a proactive approach. During the storm that we had last year on Victoria Ave, we spent an unproportionate amount of time on Victoria Ave cleaning up limbs. There was a lot of damage done to these trees, so we wanted to take that more proactive approach. And we also did that with the Boulevard. It's technically a park in ERIO, and this is kind of the start of more proactive work that we're trying to do and try to get out of just reactive, taking phone calls or noting a tree on a road patrol.
Thank you. And I was looking for a similar response from legal as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So further to Ryan's point, and you can find this on the municipality's website, so Mr. Brown will expand on this or correct me if I'm wrong. But it's my understanding that it's the municipality's policy with respect to municipal trees to preserve the tree canopy. And so a tree removal needs to be justified through something like an arborist assessment of a tree, determining that it poses a risk rather to people or property. So, from a legal perspective, from a liability perspective, it's the same analysis that I'm doing. Do we know that this tree presents a risk? And if so, what's the reasonable measure to take in response? It's sort of a funny area of law in Ontario. Municipalities are just like every other property owner. So it's the Occupiers Liability Act is what the legislation is called. It really just puts us in the same spot as any property owner. If you know you have a dangerous tree on your property and it's overhanging onto your neighbors, you're going to want to do something about that, and it's similar to the municipality. So if we, through road inspections, which Ryan mentioned, road supervisors are looking at the right-of-way, including trees that are overhanging. So if they identify a risk, that is one way that would come to the municipality's attention to review and assess whether or not maintenance is required or potentially and rarely removal. Through customer complaints, people calling in about municipal trees. But as I said, in all of those cases, if Public Works or a contracted arborist determines that the tree can be safely maintained rather than removed, it's the practice of the municipality to maintain that tree and not to remove it.
Thank you, and I'm glad to hear that. And I think when we discuss risks, it's important to say, any tree could fall, but we're not purporting we should remove them all in the municipality. We're looking at things that have been deemed a risk by professionals. So I think that's important to know, and I'm glad to hear that our priority is preservation. Thank you.
Councillor Story, followed by Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a few quick comments and then a few quick questions. Councillor Bondi mentioned my name in your remarks, so I wanted to make a slight correction. I was at a municipal conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was a session on on climate change and how it affects municipalities, and there was a lot of discussion on the panel and the crowd and the audience, which was all municipal staff or elected officials, about trees and how they are affected by climate change. And one of the questions was about a storm that had hit the city of Brantford, and a similar outcome had happened, here last summer. And the Director of Public Works equivalent, I'm not sure that was his exact title, for the city of Brantford had actually mentioned that they had a similar street like Victoria that was very historic and beautiful and had these very historic trees and heritage landscape, and that they had gone for a second opinion because there was a lot of public concern about removing the trees, and the arborist, they did get a second opinion from an arborist that with some additional work they could save more trees than they initially realized. So that was I found that of interest. I didn't anticipate this motion at the time, but it did flag my memory when we talked about it. So my first question would be, can we split all of them up, if possible?
We can.
Okay. So to lead to my next question, then, with the new, certainly respect the opinion of the MOE and the LTVCA, and I'm a member of the Sydenham Field Naturalists. But wondering, it was the Lower Thames specifically, with the new, I think it's Bill 127, or I'm not quite sure the bill, I apologize. They're not permitted to comment publicly on a lot of issues anymore. There's been a change in how they're managed. So I'm just not sure it's even possible to get their feedback, is my point. So I'm wondering about that. Perhaps to Ryan or to Edward. One of the policies that the city of Brantford also had, which I found interesting, is when it's a larger tree, like a Victoria Ave size tree, they actually had a different policy where they approached it, where they actually either replaced it with a larger tree than perhaps typical, or they would actually have 10 trees to one big tree. You know what I'm saying? Like there was actually, when it was a substantial tree of that size, they actually approached it with more of a, they planted more trees to equate to one large tree, if that's clear. So would we potentially consider something along those lines? Because these trees are, I mean, I grew up in that area, and it's certainly a beautiful area, but planting sort of a 15 millimeter is a small replacement for one of those types of trees. So would we ever consider that type of approach?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the current business case that was written and passed in the budget was to replace the trees one for one, that for every tree Public Works removes, to replace one replacement. And I believe there's been discussions at council before that, you know, under this term acceptable tree, that it's not a seedling, that it's somewhat of a mature tree. I will say we've been quite surprised by the costs of the trees that we have purchased for a 50 millimeter caliper tree, so you know, a decent sized tree, for the cost to get it installed and keep it watered and keep it alive. So I think really that is an option with regards to your comment about planting a much bigger tree, let's say. It's expense. And if we were to try something like that, obviously there'd be some budget implications. Like I said, this program is really in its infancy, as Councillor Bondi pointed out. We haven't quite hit our target yet. And this is our first year that's our goal, to get that done. But also I will confirm, I've spoke with, for instance, the City of London's Forestry Department that has a similar policy. However, it's not practical within the right-of-way. As Councillor Bondi, you know, if you have small lots on a city street, it's not practical to replace a large mature tree with 50 small trees on that property. So I believe what the City of London does is that tree is replaced there, but somewhere else in a park or a field, there is that offsetting additional trees depending on the size of the one taken down. So everything's open to consideration, and I will confirm we're going to bring back our practices to date, and would take any future direction, obviously, with budget implications.
When you're replacing the ones in Victoria, are they going, I know because it is a narrower right-of-way, are they going on the right-of-way when you're replacing the ones in Victoria? Are they going sort of, which side of the sidewalk are they going on when they're being replaced?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. The property lines on Victoria Ave vary depending on where you are. And so some of them, the property lines are right behind the sidewalk. Some are actually quite far back. So when our arborists remove a tree, and then we have office staff looking at the replacements, putting together a tender. We've built into this some leeway about species. We've had our arborists consult with a bunch of different groups to come up with a list of species so that we may not be putting back like for like, so that we get variety of species in the neighborhood. But also the location, and one of the quick reviews is for infrastructure. So for instance, if there's a main sewer or water main running right under the curb, well, let's try to put it back as far as possible, or vice versa if there's a lot of infrastructure back by the property line. And so that's part of the review on a case-by-case basis. But I believe on Victoria Ave, most of the consideration for the trees is behind the sidewalk, between the sidewalk and the property line, which is, in some lots, is quite a distance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Last question, if I was understanding Councillor B. McGregor correctly, is this a pilot? Like, so is this only lasting for like 2022? Perhaps I wasn't here when that discussion was made, or it was earlier 2022, but does that mean in 2024 it's coming back to budget for discussion? But as of right now, that would end at.
No, the program in 2022, there was $100,000 set aside for a pilot program. That money's almost been exhausted to date. But in 2024 to 27 multi-year budget, that $50,000 per year to Public Works was put in as a base ask. So that money is there forever until future consideration from council.
So we're putting in 50,000 every year indefinitely, essentially.
That's correct.
Okay. And how much does a tree cost, give or take?
The latest tender we closed 2 months ago was $525, roughly, depending on the species. And then that doesn't include the watering, but that's to purchase the tree, install the tree, And then the watering is additional depending on the time of the year. The fall plantings, we don't have to do much watering, but in the spring plantings, depending on the timing, we do. But though that's the kind of pricing we received this year.
So that is, I'm doing math on a piece of paper. Is that 1,000 trees? Not under, but 500. If we have 50 grand a year, 540, slightly under 1,000.
100.
100. See, I don't want to do math on the fly. So it's 100 trees-ish, carried to zero. Thank you. Okay, thanks for that information.
You're welcome.
Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to ask to split them up too, so I'm good. Thank you.
I don't see any other question. Oh, Councillor Harrigan.
Apologies, Mayor Caniff. I just have a question. Appreciate Councillor Story's separation. I actually read number 3 as being in an alignment with why we removed number 4. So it just reads, in keeping with our declaration of a climate emergency, other areas should be assessed to ensure we're protecting the environment and ensuring the safety of our citizens. And then there's a list of those areas. But and maybe through the mayor to Ryan, is this not what our public works team and our roads crews are already actively doing? And I would hate to be voting on something that's like an operational practice, right? Like I feel like our staff are already looking to balance the safety of citizens and also tree coverage and protection when they're making decisions about tree management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will say, speaking from public works standpoint, we're only concerned with trees in the right-of-way. So my counterpart, Rob Pollock's team, also has an arborist on staff who are looking at trees in parks and trails, I believe were mentioned on there. But to the question, as I said before, a lot of our work has been more reactive based on our assessments as we're doing a road patrol. That's not an in-depth assessment of a specific tree, but for instance, if the tree is visibly broken or has no leaves on it, those are the kind of things we pick up. So we are doing this, and we are trying to do it in a more proactive manner, as this report we generated. My concern with number 3 from staff's point of view is, as mentioned in the notice of motion form, that it somewhat says that I read this as staff are to go out and complete all these reviews before we move forward with the Victoria removals indicated in the report. And so to me, if number 3 was to pass, I feel like we have direction to not remove the trees until all these other assessments are completed, which it would take a very long time to do.
And if number 3 were to fail, you would interpret that as being status quo in terms of operations.
That's correct. And then if 1 or 2 were to pass, that would be different.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, final comments, Councillor Juvenville and Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Ken. Well, I guess I've said it all, but really number 1 is the most important part of this motion that I'm really hoping council will consider. Again, it's not a lot of money, like at all. It's a second opinion. We've got 2 opinions here. I could go through like at least 10 examples. Like in one case, one arborist has one species of tree and the other arborist has a different species of tree. It's the same tree. It's the same well, it's not the same picture, but it's a picture of the tree. So I think, a third opinion might not be a bad idea. And again, with more of an emphasis on preservation. If trees have to come down, they have to come down. I get it. But I think, like I've already mentioned, I understand when an arborist is asked to look at a tree by a municipality, the safest thing they can do, unless that tree is perfect, is to say cut it down. And I get that. I understand why they're doing it. But I think another opinion based on, hopefully being able to save these trees might result in, it may result in the same thing. If that's the case, it's not a lot of money and it would satisfy me and a whole bunch of other people, but I think it's worth it. Now, as far as number 3, if that passed, which I'm sure it's not going to, but if it did, would it mean do not cut down any trees on Victoria until that assessment? Yes, it does mean that, because I think there are far more dangerous trees in those areas particularly, and then not be limited to, well, I'd leave that to the discretion of staff. But, and I think it's reasonable, if we're gonna cut down trees on Victoria for safety, I really think the O'Neill Nature Preserve, Paxton's Bush, and the dog park particularly, should be looked at first, and I would think there's likely more dangerous and more, there's might be more of a priority to take down those trees. It's particularly in the summer months. Those places are full of people, pedestrians at that. So yeah, I would suggest that those areas be looked at and then we prioritize. And if there's enough money and time to go around and do all of what's been determined to be done, great. But I don't think we should ignore these pedestrian-filled areas and put a lot of resources into Victoria. And that's everything. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Okay, with that, we'll be voting on each separately, and we're going to start with number 1.
Councillor Doyle
Yes.
and Councillor Wright.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion fails 6-8. Move on to number 2. And Councillor Wright,
Yes.
Councillor Doyle,
Yes.
all votes are in. Motion fails 5-9. And finally, number 3. Councillor Doyle,
No.
Councillor Wright,
No.
all votes are in. Motion fails 3-11.
Okay, we'll move to notice of motion. Councillor Jubenville.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas current Chatham-Kent municipal ward boundaries have existed since 1998, when 23 separate municipalities formed a single government and amalgamated into the municipality of Chatham-Kent, and whereas a boundary review of Chatham-Kent wards has not taken place since this time, despite consistent housing and population growth in our municipality, and whereas in February 2024, Chatham-Kent Council voted largely in favor, 11-3, of a boundary review with consideration of respecting communities of interest and options to ensure both rural and urban voices are represented and included in each ward, as well as other potential options, taking into account community consultations and best practices. Therefore, be it resolved that Chatham-Kent Council authorize a review funded by strategic reserves of the existing outdated ward boundaries to redefine and update them to ensure both rural and urban voices are represented and included in each ward, as well as other potential options, taking into account community consultation and best practices, while providing a number of options for council's consideration and final decision. This will be returned to council for discussion and voting in time for the 2026 municipal election. Thank you.
Closed session reports. Councillor Crew and Councillor C. McGregor, can I check that, please?
I move that council directed administration on a proposed acquisition of land by the municipality with regard to a potential affordable housing location in Chatham, Section 239-2C of the Municipal Act 2001. And council received information on advice that was subject to solicitor-client privilege with regard to motion by Councillor Bondi regarding the tree removal from Erio and Victoria Ave, corresponding to item 20D on the open session agenda, Section 239-2F of the Municipal Act 2001. I so move.
Happy to second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Wright,
Yes.
Councillor Doyle,
Yes.
all votes are in. Motion passes 14-0.
Communication items. Councillor Harrigan and Councillor Thompson, can I get you to move them, please?
So moved, Mayor Caniff.
And seconded.
Any questions? Seeing none, motion passes. Non-agenda business, Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just wanted to draw attention to the current boil water advisory that is in existence for community members and homeowners in the towns of Wheatley, Tilbury, and also some of our neighboring communities. Through you, I was hoping for maybe just a brief update on that boil water advisory and information on where residents can go to get the most up-to-date information.
Thank you, Councillor Harrigan, for your question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Media release was issued earlier this afternoon, and PUC staff have consulted with public health staff and our medical officer of health. And we did put out the boil water advisory. Our medical officer of health is recommending right now that water is brought to a rolling boil for at least 1 minute prior to using it for any kinds of domestic purposes, for brushing your teeth, for drinking, washing dishes, those kinds of things. The information, there's up-to-date information on the Let's Talk Chatham CK page, so residents can go to get information there. They are also able to call the Water Advisory Update line at 519-436-3250 to get more information as well, or if they have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just a quick question to the Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, if there was there's been a lot of questions recently about the amount of work that's been achieved from the Ridge Landfill Community Trust in regards to the trees that has been planted in Ward 2. And I've just received some updated information from the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority. Was just wondering how we could get that included potentially in an upcoming agenda for communication purposes, just for information.
Sure, I can definitely put it in the upcoming communication package. I can reach out to Lower Thames for the information, or if you have it, if you forward it to me, we'll definitely put it in the next package.
Perfect, thank you. Just one quick question to Edward. Edward, there was a couple days last week that received like 6 to 10 emails directed for engineering concerns. And just to help, I can only imagine how inundated you are sometimes. Just for references, can you just explain the best way for us to ensure that that communication is done so and logged? Just because, like I said, there was literally 2 days, as you're aware, that there was almost a half a dozen concerns come in, and I'm sure that everybody's getting them. You're probably getting the same thing in multiple facets.
Thank you. Through the mayor, the best way for residents to submit a complaint or an issue for us to resolve really is through the 311 system. That ensures it's a streamlined approach, that we're actually tracking that complaint and ensuring that our response timelines are met from that perspective. Sending it to multiple staff members, will create a bit of confusion, and it really isn't really a clear sort of understanding of who's looking after it. So I would always suggest that if there's something coming in from residents that we go through the 311 system, and I'm sure the Director of Customer Service here would love to add in something here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll echo Edward's comments. Please do have any constituents forward questions, concerns through the 311 system. When you're in Chatham-Kent, you can easily reach us by calling 311 or 360-1998 if 311 doesn't work for you, if you're too close to a boundary or outside of Chatham-Kent. Also, CK311 at chatham-kent.ca is a good avenue for folks to email us if that's a more efficient method of communication.
Thank you. And lastly, last week was Municipal Clerk Week, and I just wanted to tell the clerks team how much we appreciate all their efforts to run a good organized meeting and how hard they work, so thank you.
Mr. Dubin, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just in response to Councillor Sakatchi's question, I myself am finding that if I call 311, that's the best way to go. First of all, it gets in the queue. There's a record. The right people get the request. There was a street light out as well as a catch basin that was backed up in a neighborhood that I saw driving through Chatham. Within a couple of days, it was addressed, and not because I made the call. I just went through the system like any resident would. I think we forget about what a good tool it is, and so I think one of the things we'll be talking about is how can we get more members of the public to understand 311. So I would urge all councillors to direct your residents to call 311. It really does work, and you do get a notice acknowledging that you've made that you've filed the work request, and then you also get a notice letting you know that the work has been done. So it's a very effective tool, and we need to use it more. So thank you for the question.
Okay, first and second reading, Councillor B. McGregor and Councillor Harrigan. Can I get you to move the first and second, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any questions? Seeing none, motion carried. Third and final reading, Councillor Doyle and Councillor McGrail.
So seconded.
Any questions? Seeing none, motion carried. The council closing, Councillor Crew and Councillor Allen. Can I get you to close this one out?
I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held Monday, May 27th, 2024, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act. I so move.
And seconded.
Anyone opposed at calling it quits at 8:57? Seeing none, call it a night. Thanks.